Three recent football-themed movies with a varying degree of sort of based on a true story nature. Let's talk American Underdog, Home Team, and National Champions. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to spoiler-free reviews of three recent films available now for home viewing. You've got American Underdog, which just went up on demand, Home Team on Netflix, and National Champions. You can get that on demand at this point as well. I figured, you know what, this is Super Bowl weekend when I'm recording this, so no better time to talk about football and football-based movies. I don't care about football, really. I don't watch it, but I love a good sports movie, and there may be one good sports movie in this mix of three as we'll move forward here on American Underdog first. But before we go into these reviews, I do want to welcome you to my channel, Dan Reviews It. Please consider subscribing down below there. Would love to have you aboard. And comment, too. What did you think of any of these movies? Are you a football movie fan? So first, we're going to talk about American Underdog. I think this is the biggest of the three. It hit theaters on Christmas Day, I believe, or Christmas weekend, whatever, and is now available on demand, so you can watch it at home if you missed it in the theaters. And this one is, we're sort of doing this also in order, I think, of the based on a true story nature. Not just, the popularity maybe of the film, but this one I think is the most based in reality. And this is about Kurt Warner, the famous NFL quarterback. He's played here by our friend Zachary Levi. Love that guy. And this is essentially his story. This is a faith-based movie, but only to the degree that, Kurt Warner is a Christian and his faith, sort of has helped guide him in his life choices. But it really does not beat you over the head with it like a lot of, like God's Not Dead or something like that. But this is very family-friendly. It's PG. And, Zachary Levi is always a charismatic lead, so we see that on display here. Other people in this movie featured are Anna Paquin and Dennis Quaid, a few other people that we really love. So he desperately wants to be a Super Bowl quarterback, and he's, got some ups and downs in his young adult life. So we sort of go on this journey with him, and then eventually, again, we're not going to do spoilers, but if you know about Kurt Warner, then you probably know a good bit about what happens in this movie anyway. And from what I read, this is pretty true to the real story. There's a few tweaks, obviously. There's a couple of people in this movie that maybe didn't exist in his life, really, but for the most part of these three movies, this one seems to be the most, based in reality. I liked this movie. I mean, there's some good football action, but also some good, family style sort of morals and lessons. And yes, there is some, God stuff and Christian stuff, which, look, I consider myself a Christian as well, so I'm fine with all that. But, again, what they don't do here is really, really, like, hammer it home. It's not like every scene is based around, oh, God almighty, what should I do? That kind of thing. So when you compare it to a lot of the Christian-based films we've seen over the years, this is actually pretty light in that department, I think. So I think this is going to be a nice movie for, the whole family, really, regardless of your religion. I think there's just a lot of nice, moral sort of lessons here and that kind of thing, and family, of course. And so Anna Paquin, this gal that he ends up dating and then marrying, she plays Brenda, but she's got a few kids, and they've all got their own issues. One of them is blind, and so he sort of integrates himself with those kids and into that family. And so it's sort of a lot of lessons at once, because of course, we're looking to live out his dream, but also how do I be a better person? How do I love more? That kind of thing. So, listen, it might lay some of these things on a little too thick. It is like I said, rated PG. A lot of movies like this do kind of lay on the themes a little bit heavy-handed. And yeah, we get a little bit of that here, but I do think there's a nice balance that we don't always get in these kinds of movies. Now, talking about Zachary Levi specifically, I'm a little bit torn on his role. I like the guy a lot. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Chuck TV series. I never watched it, but I always wanted to. But going back to his voice work in Tangled and all his guest spots on various shows, I like Zachary Levi, but I really think he's a little too old for this role, and he does look young for his age, that's for sure. But this is supposed to be taking place when this person is in their young to mid 20s. Zachary Levi is pushing 40 at this point. I think I might have felt differently if I didn't quite know Zachary Levi. Like when I think of movies where there's somebody 30 or 35 plus playing a young 20 something or whatever. The ones that work the most are people that I don't necessarily know that well. But like Zachary Levi, I'm like, well, I've been watching this guy on screen for 15 years. So, there's a little bit of a disconnect in my brain with that. But I will admit, he does look amazingly young for his age. We saw that very well in Shazam, sort of a immature superhero of sorts because he's really a kid, when he turns into Shazam. But I got a little bit caught up in that, and he is only about 9 years younger than the real Kurt Warner, but this is supposed to take place about 20 years ago, so it's like there's definitely a little bit of an age disconnect there, but it was not too distracting for me, but just enough to be like, okay, I'm not sure this was perfect casting, but look, I think he does good in the role. So it's not necessarily that he's a bad actor or anything like that. I just don't know that this was the perfect casting choice. But this is a feel-good movie. I felt good after watching it, and I really do enjoy the film. So I leave American Underdog with a B. Up next, we're going to go to Netflix. This was a Netflix original, and it comes from the old house of Happy Madison Productions. Adam Sandler is not in this one, but some of his regular buddies are, including Kevin James, Rob Schneider, and Taylor Lautner. So this is also pretty based on a true story, not as much, I think, as American Underdog, but this is about the NFL coach Sean Payton, who was in some hot water in the New Orleans Saints with some stuff where he was sort of, encouraging his players to, really take out the other team and hospitalize them and all this stuff. So he gets put on leave, and he ends up coaching his 12-year-old son's football team during that NFL suspension. So, of course, we get the tropes of, okay, this is a dad who is, not really a dad to this kid, but of course they bond because he's, out of work now for a year, and he decides to take up with his son's team, and so they just, form this bond from that, but of course at first, not so much. Very standard stuff here. Sandler did produce this, but really Kevin James, is the front and center star here. He plays Sean Payton. Also, Taylor Lautner plays the head coach. So, Sean Payton's just sort of helping out, but he, as you can imagine, may end up taking over more than maybe the other coaches would like. And then Rob Schneider plays the new husband, the stepdad to Sean's kid. And there's a few more like Sandler regulars and minor roles here, but really, these are the focal points. I hate Rob Schneider. I'm never shy about that. I think he is one of the most talentless people to come out of Saturday Night Live. I hate that Sandler is so loyal to him because he just is garbage. And so I did not care for any of the scenes he was in. But Kevin James, on the other hand, look, he's a little hit or miss at the movies. I will admit that. But I will say I think his best movies are probably the more sports-related ones. I really enjoyed Here Comes the Boom. That's probably the best Kevin James movie there is. But this is, of course, a Sandler production, so we get all of the Sandler-isms. There's a scene where in the middle of the movie, all the players get sick, so there's like a huge vomiting scene. And I just was like, why do we need this? Like, this is also PG, I believe. So pretty family friendly. Everybody can watch this. But like, why? Why do we have these? This nice family movie. It seems to be going okay. It's not too Sandlered up, and then all of a sudden we have the vomit scene. It was unnecessary, and it took me, right out, and I almost, didn't want to watch the rest of it after that. I was like, this is so stupid, and I hate it. So there's little, scenes like that, and drips of Sandler that I just can do without. And look, there's no doubt that Adam Sandler is a successful guy, but I think there's a reason that he's sort of the butt of a lot of jokes in the industry, and ended up going to Netflix because that's sort of a better home for his movies than maybe on the big screen. We don't need to see Grown Ups 5 on the big screen. But this movie does have a really good heart to it, and Kevin James, though not necessarily a likable dude, because we have to think about sort of, all right, what did this guy do to get in this situation? It's not that great, but they're sort of making him the hero of this story. In the real world, I'm not positive that's the best example, but it's okay. Kevin James does play the role very well, and it's got some humor to it. Not a ton, but it's funny enough. But more is the heart of this movie for sure. So look, I'm not in love with it. I don't hate it. I'm gonna leave it with a C. I think it does have some nice messages, and it is heartwarming towards the end, like a lot of the Sandler productions. But there's too much Sandler involved, all right, so finally we're going to close with another movie that was in theaters briefly in December, kind of tanked at the box office, but now it is available on demand and all your home services as well, wherever you buy your movies at home. And it's interesting that not only are these three movies all about football, but they're about different different parts of your life, because Home Team is about young kids. They're 10 or 11 years old. And then you've got the full, NFL experience with American Underdog. This is about college players. And this is the only one that isn't based on anything, of a true story, but it does incorporate themes that I think are hot button issues with a lot of people. But just, this is not really based on like true characters or anything like that. So this is an interesting one because there's no football in the movie. The other two movies are more about the game, the coaching and that kind of thing. This is about a coach and it's about some players, but not 1 second of this movie is actually playing football, which, look, I'm okay with. As I said, I'm not like a huge football fan or anything. But I will say it would have been nice maybe for the average football fan out there to get some sort of playtime here in this movie. J.K. Simmons sort of heads up the cast as the coach, James Laser, but Stephen James leads the charge here with the college kids, and in fact, he literally leads a charge because the whole movie is really about him and his team striking before the biggest game of the year, because there is an issue with the compensation that football players get in college, which is next to nothing, as opposed to the school that gets millions and millions and millions of dollars from the fans and the the merchandise and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of a disparity there. And that's sort of where the real world element comes into this movie, because that is an issue that I have certainly heard, and I don't even really follow football circles, but I know that that's sort of a hot button issue sort of in that industry. But this is not based on real people. It's not based on real events or anything like that. I thought it kind of might have been, but I looked into it and it's not. So, this movie is easily the worst of the three, and it has nothing really to do with the fact that they're not playing football. I could sort of take or leave that if the story was compelling, if the dialogue was compelling. My biggest issues with this movie are number one, whoever wrote the script, let's look and see who this is. Adam Mervis, don't know him. He tried, and I think the director as well tried, Rick Roman Waugh, don't know him either, tried desperately to make this an Aaron Sorkin type production. There are a lot of big monologues and a lot of speechifying and some walk and talks, and none of it comes out, I think, the way they were hoping because the script is so bad. It's so forced. There's also these commentators that they'll have come up, and of course they're not commentating a game because we don't see football in this movie, but they are discussing the players strike and this and that, and they come off so corny and so unrealistic that each one of these movies has something that sort of took me out. That took me out every time because they were so inauthentic to me. And then there's also a lot of shaky cam, and I don't even mean in a horror movie. What I mean is at some point they'll be sort of holding on somebody, and it'll be a little bit okay, we're in the moment, and then all of a sudden it'll drop a little bit, and you're like, okay, that's not even shaky cam. That's the cameraman sort of slipped or something, and then they just left it in the movie. So there was a lot of scenes like that. Now that being said, this one has the most high profile cast of all of them, I think. I mean, American Underdog has, three big players, but here you've got J.K. Simmons, Tim Blake Nelson, Laurel Howery, David Koechner, Jeffrey Donovan, Kristen Chenoweth, Timothy Oliphant. I mean, these are all fairly big names, but then I think the best part of this movie, the only reason to really even see this movie is Uzu Adoba, who, of course, was from Orange is the New Black and In Treatment on HBO. And she doesn't even show up till at least half the movie. I think it was the 52 or 53-minute mark. Because she comes in and it's just this lightning storm. You're like, oh, okay, now I'm actually awake and watching this movie. So I paused it to see how long in before we see her. And it's a good 53 minutes. But she gives this amazing speech. The only part of this movie that I would say is actually Sorkin-esque in the delivery of the monologuing. It's fantastic. It's great. And I need more of her. If the movie was about her and her character, the plot would be a little bit different, but I would definitely be on board for that. She's by far the best part of this movie. And not that anybody else necessarily is bad. J.K. Simmons couldn't turn in a bad performance if he tried, and a lot of these other people too. But yeah, she's the reason for me that this movie at all even remotely works. And believe me, it doesn't really work. But because of her, it saved it from even being a lower grade. So National Champions, I will leave with a D+. So definitely did them in the order, that they were, but also I think in the order of sort of importance. American Underdog was, mild box office hit that people went out to see during the holidays, and Home Team is, of course, the latest Sandler Netflix production, so people are watching that. American Home Champions or whatever, National Champions, I think you can skip altogether. I can't even remember the name. It's such a generic name. So, all right, well, that will do it. Hopefully this gave you a little bit of a guide here on Super Bowl weekend of what you might want to watch. And if you're watching it after the fact, things to check out now that the football season is over, right? So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.